Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined today by Mr. Denny Carter, and right off the jump, MLive.com's Ben Ravens, a Detroit Lions beat reporter, one of the very best in the business. And he's going to help us as our division preview series rolls on, getting near its conclusion. Only 3 teams left as training camp is raging. We'll be joined a little later by the Leap's Jason Hirschhorn, apparently Threads friends with Denny Carter. 2 people using Threads. I don't know.
And Blue Sky. I know him on Blue Sky as well. It's
a free country. That's all I'll say. As Elon Musk is intent on reminding me every day, I can do whatever I want on my platform X. And but guess what, Elon? I was here first, and I'm not leaving. But Ben, second year in a row, he's joining us. We're going to ask you all about the Lions, some usage questions, and how they might apply to fantasy football. But first things first, we have to start right off the top with the most important question to me and Denny, and has Dan Campbell changed his caffeine intake habits at all for the 2024 summer, or is he about to still have so much caffeine that 5 truckers would instantly die?
Yeah, 5 or 6 truckers would instantly be dead if they had what he has. He comes through when we're sitting there in our chairs waiting for him to come through. I swear to God, he hits that door at 25 miles an hour and hits that podium. They have replaced the lectern, the Lions facility, and the Meyer grocery stores made it for him. It's like massive because he just sits up there and he rocks it and
it's like from brutalist Soviet era, like the biggest lectern I've ever seen in my entire life. Somehow
it weighs like 2,000 pounds. It looks like.
Not entirely sure about the aesthetics of that thing, but what time of the day or the morning is this? By the way, where has he already had 44 ounces of caffeine by 7 o'clock Eastern time?
And whenever you see a team video of him walking into the facility, he's just double fisting the extra venti iced coffees, probably with 6 shots of espresso in each of them. But no, he's he never changes. You know what you're getting every single day with him.
Does he ever gently chide the press corps I'm buzzing here at 7 a.m. and there's Ben Raven over there looking like a little sleepy.
Wake up, man.
He actually seems like a nice guy.
He's awesome. No, he is.
He seems like someone who would make that kind of joke. He seems like someone, who's just one of the best coaches in the NFL, Ben. And that's why it's heady times. If you're a Lions fan, that's because for the first time in probably any of our adult lives, this team is a conference favorite. They were hyped last year, but nothing like this year. They're one of the true favorites in the NFC, and that includes they're so good. There's not even many question marks this year for the Lions. Another thing we're just not used to whatsoever with this team. That includes in the offensive skill core, where much of the same supporting cast is returning. There are still a few questions, and that includes Jameson Williams, who's still trying to make a name for himself 2 years after being the number 12 overall pick. But there's been a drumbeat of hype, including from the aforementioned Dan Campbell, who's called him a man on a mission. Your teammates in the press corps, so to speak, have been really positive. Guys are never trying to intentionally hype people, but just continually positive reports on Jameson Williams. What have you observed personally, though? What is this real? What might a statistical ceiling be this season? Where are we at on the JMO hype train?
It is real. There is real growth that you can see. I mean, because I'll tell you, Dan Campbell cannot tell a lie. So when he praises somebody in a press conference, it's real. Because just go back to a year ago when he's talking about Denzel Mims, and so he's in the room. So no, it's no, it is real. You see a bigger route tree. You see him getting used in different ways. You see him. The thing I love about JMO is he is a psycho. He will dive at every single ball. He goes all out. I mean, there's nobody I'm going into my 6th year covering this team. I've never seen somebody hit the ground at 195 miles an hour the way he hits it, just selling out for anything. But you really do see it, and you do see the trust, and you're not seeing the boneheaded drops. You're not seeing the drops against air. You're not seeing drops in practice. A year ago, it was oh my God, what is this guy? He can't catch a slant over the middle. His timing with Goff is off, but you really do just see the timing, the trust. I mean, Goff and him's connection is the thing that sticks out the most, because there was a lot said about Goff's ability to be the guy that get him the ball downfield. You are starting to see that click. Those pylon deep balls, I mean, they're hitting 1 or 2 of those every day with guys in coverage. I really do think that there's 700 to 800 yards receiving in there if you get him clicking and you can keep him healthy for 15 plus games.
You talked about Dan Campbell being honest. Can't help but being honest about his players, about the team. I remember him being somewhat critical of Jameson Williams last year, and saying he's not there. Like I like him, I like his potential, but he's just not there. Is there a physical change for Williams? Is he bigger, or is this just purely a mental shift that he's undergone?
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I do think he has added some weight. I really do think, because you're not seeing him get blocked off the line. You're seeing better releases. I mean, they're playing press coverage every single snap out there this year, and he's not getting bumped off. And he more or less admitted to us in OTAs that he started lifting weights for the first time of his life this year. So I do think
maybe should have kept that one private, but yeah,
that's for sure. But you just look at his lower body, and it's just like, I mean, he's a skinny guy for sure,
right?
But it's not like the toothpick twigs when he showed up as a rookie.
That's exactly what I was looking for, because I was hesitant about how small he was, not necessarily short, but just a small frame, and I did read a report a couple months ago that he was trying to put on weight. I wasn't sure if that effort took, but it does make a big difference. And if you're going to be an every down player like he's supposed to be, I think that's important. Do you think that he'll get any usage in the intermediate part of the field, or are we talking about strictly just a downfield guy in this offense?
There's going to be crossers galore for that man this year. There really are crossers and slants. They're going to find ways to get him the ball. I think he's going to get a ton of rushing attempts this year too. I mean, you look back at that NFC title game and they score in 55 seconds off of 2 Jameson Williams touches. And I mean, that's you don't need to give Ben Johnson too many reasons to get a guy a ball and find a new way to get him the ball. But I do think there's going to be a lot more short stuff, a lot more intermediate stuff. I do think there's just going to be a lot more meat on the bone, because that was the main thing. They were like, don't get bumped off the line of scrimmage. That's what Antoine Randall told him to go in the offseason to focus on. And I got to give him credit. I mean, it looks like he is taking that to heart and put on a little weight. I'm not going to say he's ready to go play small forward or power forward out there, but there's a little more sturdiness to him, no doubt.
That was the main question I was wondering with Jameson Williams, because I knew that, I believed that it was possible he looked better as just Jameson Williams, like the fast guy who's supposed to stretch the field. I was just wondering if he could ever become like an all-around type player. And like you not hinted at, as you alluded to, we saw that in the biggest game in recent Lions history in the NFC Championship game. It sounds like you're saying, he's not just – it was a valuable role, but it's not just going to maybe be a role for Jameson Williams, but like an all-around number 2 receiver type stuff from him.
Yeah, and that was one of my biggest question marks. Why didn't this team re-sign Josh Reynolds? He only left for $4 million guaranteed, but I really do think that Jameson Williams played a hefty amount into that equation. Like Dan Campbell, what you said earlier, he said about Jameson last year, he's never going to be a possession guy. He is never going to be a possession guy, but there's no reason this guy can't have a lot more targets every single game. I mean, I do think that there are going to be game plans with him right there with St. Brown getting looks, just because I've been around some special athletes, even in Detroit for the time I've been here. When you see this guy run, it never gets old. So it's just like there's something special to unlock there, and they've got the right coaching staff to get that out of him. But I do think that there's an actual wide receiver 2. You can call him wide receiver 2 now, where we were kind of not ready to do that when the season ended last year.
Really good stuff. Really glad too that when you called him a psycho, it was because of his motor and his dog levels, and not because of his condiment choices.
Exactly.
Very still questionable condiment choices from Jameson Williams. Ben, I mentioned not a lot of change, not a lot of turnover with the Lions this year, and to the surprise of almost everyone, that includes an offensive coordinator, where Ben Johnson is still around. And just what, if anything, do you think he might change with this offensive approach this year, or is this kind of running back what's worked with such surprising success to us outsiders over the past 2 years of Jared Goff?
I do think it's going to be more of the same, but the thing about Ben Johnson is that he really is a multifaceted thinker with the way he takes his offense. I mean, he really does approach the offense of like, I don't have a scheme, I'm multiple. Like, tell me what my opponent is good at, and I will work around that. And I do think a lot of that goes into Detroit's offensive line. It really does allow them to kind of be a hard-nosed team when they need to be, but then also you get Goff and LaPorta and St. Brown clicking in that system, just that high timing, relying on timing and trust system. And I mean, you see it. It's a versatile attack, and I do think it'll be more the same. And that is Ben Johnson, but I do give a lot of credit to the offensive line to letting him call what he wants to call when he wants to call it.
Real quick, Denny's asked you about the backfield. We know it's Ben Johnson. I wonder too, how much of that is Dan Campbell? Is this like his offensive vision still? 'Cause I know when he took play calling duties over from Anthony Lynn 2 or 3 years ago, whatever it was, the change was almost overnight. Do you think Dan Campbell gets enough credit for like the vision of this offense, or is it really kind of Ben Johnson is the architect of this offense? I've always wondered how much of this is Campbell, how much of this is Johnson.
That's the main thing I was trying to calm Lions fans down when they thought Ben was hopping on that jet to Washington, was just like, we started seeing this aggressive, high-powered passing attack when Dan Campbell took over. Like, it's his offense. I just think Ben Johnson has been the perfect guy to take it, to expand on it, get more out of it and stuff like that. But no, Dan Campbell does not get enough credit for this offense. I mean, people love to just call him a meathead and stuff like that. I mean, this guy, he knows his X's and O's. He knows his football.
Yeah. He's a thinker. He's a thinker. Yeah. He'll fool you, because he looks like he could step on the field and play 35 snaps a game. But he is definitely a thinker. I wanted to ask you quickly about the Detroit backfield. Much to the chagrin of folks who took Jahmyr Gibbs in drafts last year, Gibbs never really fully dispatched with David Montgomery last season. Gibbs was the 1A by the end of the season. After David Montgomery returned from injury in week 10, Gibbs not only scored more fantasy points, but played more snaps, especially down the stretch. Do you see this dynamic further shifting this season toward Gibbs as the clear 1A, or can David Montgomery continue to handle, maybe 40-50% of the Lions backfield snaps?
I believe it was a year ago on this show where I was telling people David Montgomery is going way too low in drafts, and I'm going to say it again right here, right now. David Montgomery's role is going to be exactly what it was as last year. They love this guy. He is like a running back made from Dan Campbell's DNA. Just like the way he plays, the way he practices, what he does, the way he blocks in the backfield. But I will say this. We didn't get to see it during the regular season last year because they were both dinged up at times. I think you will see Gibbs and Montgomery share the field a little more because there is kind of a question mark at wide receiver 3. There's not a true wide receiver 3 on this offense. And you see Gibbs working with him, Amon-Ra St. Brown after practice on releases. You see him at the jugs machine doing the 204 or whatever Amon-Ra does every single day. I do think that there is a higher ceiling as a receiver for Gibbs this year, but I really do think, barring injuries and all that, you're going to see a pretty similar backfield share. I mean, Gibbs is a freak, like, no doubt about it. Like, that's a superstar right there in the making. But, like, when you love a hard-nosed running back, you love a hard-nosed running back. And, like, he's going to get, like, if Montgomery's healthy, he's going to get exactly what he got last year.
Well, Ben, that's the wrong answer. We didn't want to hear that.
Sorry. So you're telling me, quote, run back their extremely successful approach from last year? It doesn't seem like that makes any sense to me. I guess not a surprising answer. Both still going in the top 20 at running back. But Jahmyr Gibbs is going as the RB3 or 4. We're counting on superstar production from Jahmyr Gibbs. But we've seen before, there's been a few guys who have done that while still splitting a backfield. But it's hard to do. And basically what you're saying is Jahmyr is going to have to be even more special this year. We're going to ask you about Sam LaPorta in just a second, who is clearly one of the top 2 or 3 pass catchers. But you referenced the receiver core specifically, where we can't really identify a number 3 receiver, which kind of adds pressure to really needing the Jameson Williams hype to be real. So is it AR, SB, Sam LaPorta, and JMO, and then just kind of maybe making it up as it goes along? Are there any other pass catchers who are going to matter in this offense from a statistical perspective?
And we had this talk before I left the media room today. Like, Daurice Fountain is their wide receiver 3 right now. Like, he's repping with the first teams right now. But I'll just say this, like, Khalif Raymond is going to have the role he had last year. Like, he is their gadget guy. He is the guy that fills the slot when Amon-Ra St. Brown bounces around a little. Like, there is a special level of trust in Khalif Raymond in that system and what he brings. But no, there's not a fantasy threat outside of those names you listed right there. But yeah, like Donovan Peoples-Jones is he's in the room guy this year. I do not expect him to crack that depth chart. But I would just it's like Daurice Fountain and the rest of them. But yeah, Khalif Raymond is going to be the next productive wide receiver out of that group. So.
Listen, Khalif Raymond, the nerds know.
They know.
He was top 5 in ESPN's open score last year, and he's a productive guy when given a chance. I don't know what teams have against him, but if anybody in this receiver room misses any time this year, I will be very interested in Khalif Raymond.
Absolutely.
Denny loves role players more than anyone on earth, but he's going to ask you about someone who's
I do.
not a role
And
player.
Yes, and every time Pat and I have tried to poke holes in Sam LaPorta's rookie year pass catching profile, we have failed spectacularly. And I mean, he's like clearly like on a trajectory to be a great player in the league. LaPorta last year caught 86 passes on 120 targets. I guess the question is there room for growth? Did he hit his ceiling last year? And then I guess, where does Jameson Williams mix in here? Because I'm thinking if LaPorta and Amon-Ra St. Brown are going to get 50% of the targets, what does that mean for Williams? Or is Williams going to eat into these guys' monster target share?
I do not think LaPorta has hit his ceiling, because he is the guy that shows up and it's like annoying how perfect and crisp he is and good. It's like, what the hell? How's this guy so good? Like, no, I mean, he is their second option. I mean, we're talking about even with Jameson's growth, and even if it carries over into camp, like LaPorta is this team's second option. Like LaPorta is the guy I look at that is going to be that guy where Jared Goff can close his eyes and throw the Josh Reynolds route in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, there is that connection there. I do think LaPorta could see more targets, catch more balls, kind of, because like they've built this system, like this is a perfect system for him. And Goff really is like the ideal quarterback for a guy with that skill set and the way they play. And I mean, they brought Brock Wright back for like $15 million to handle all that dirty work for a reason. I mean, they're going to free LaPorta up to be that big slot, to move around some. So yeah, it's I don't think Jameson will eat into that. I think more than anything, it might enhance guys like LaPorta and St. Brown, because if Jamo's an actual threat and not just, hey, pay attention to that guy, he's fast, like if he can draw some of that downfield attention, I mean, LaPorta is going to eat over the middle.
You're right. Oh, yeah. Man. Wow. That just dawned on me. LaPorta is going to catch 150 passes.
He might.
Yeah, to just piggyback off both your points. Yeah, I pull up Sam LaPorta's, this Pro Football Reference, like, man, like I know this guy's amazing, but how do you improve on 86 catches? I guess a tight end, but you laid out it is just right there for him. And that as hard as it is to believe, it does seem like there's probably more coming from Sam LaPorta. And yeah, Denny and I, we tried to true them occasionally, and it's never, ever, ever works.
It never works.
Ever. He's too good, and good to know he's as hard of a worker to keep it up too. This might be the final one. It's kind of boilerplate, but I'd like to ask everybody, who's a skill player. So I try to limit it to skill player, not just the entire 90-man roster. Maybe surprised you during OTAs or now the early days of training camp. Not early days anymore, I guess 7 to 10 days into training camp. Does someone who's catching your eye and surprising you? I guess it could be from a negative perspective too. Just someone who has surprised you so far as the Lions get ready for the regular season.
Yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones has been a negative surprise, because I kind of think that Josh Reynolds' role was there for him to take it. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the vertical, and it's just, you're getting out-repped by Antoine Green. You're literally passed in the depth chart, in my opinion, by Darius Fountain, who's been a journeyman bouncing around this league. You just look at him and you're like, how are you not doing more? Like, how are you not doing more with what you got? So that's been a little disappointing. And not the sexiest name in the world, but Shane Zylstra, I feel like, is going to make this roster and have a little bit of a red zone role in this offense, just as kind of a guy that fits their offense well and does not drop anything thrown his way.
Couldn't remember if he was like an H-back or a pure tight end. He's like a pure tight end, right?
He's like Minnesota State University's like all-time leading receiver.
But he was a receiver and they converted him to tight end?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
I see Traquan Smith is on the Lions, by the way. Is he doing anything in practice?
He has a couple catches every day where I'm like, oh, yeah, that's Traquan Smith. But yeah.
Traquan seems like someone who should have been a better role.
Yeah, it's like there's St. Brown and Khalifa ahead of him in that role. That's like an impossible thing to break through.
Right.
Like they spent a ton of money on the undrafted Isaiah Williams cat out of Illinois, and it's just like there's just no room for you here now. So it's just they're kind of loaded there.
Actually, Isaiah Williams, a name I hadn't heard really since I remember him as like a priority free agent. A lot of interesting guys, but yeah, as you said, put so eloquently, it's hard to break through. It was kind of a settled matter offense. And we really appreciate you breaking it down for us. So the matters that aren't settled, the JMO, we needed someone on the show to talk about JMO. We could have just talked about JMO for like 20 minutes. He's going to be like a hinge point player in fantasy this year. And you really brought us the goods on Jameson Williams. We really appreciate that.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Before we let you go, I almost sent you out here out having you tell people where they can find you on social media, where your written work is. Where can we find Mr. Ben Raven doing such excellent work on the Lions beat?
I use my given name of Benjamin S. Raven on Twitter. You can find me there, and mlive.com/Lions is where you can find the daily camp reports, and we'll be coming back with our weekly podcast as well, focused on all things Lions.
We have been perusing them. We appreciate them very much. And Ben, we appreciate you so much taking the time. And I'm just going to I should probably do this off air. Can you do this 364 days from now next year? Also?
Deal. Booked.
Just trying to line up some guests ahead of time. Sometimes I take too long. Ben, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
Awesome stuff from Ben. My only criticism of Ben is he probably needs to drink enough caffeine to kill a trucker on the spot.
I don't know how someone drinks that much caffeine. I feel like I would have a medical emergency if I had even like half of what Dan Campbell has. I don't know.
It'll be a minor emergency if we don't take a short break. We got something to tell you, and then we will be right back after this. The Rotoworld Draft Guide is back, and it has a bit of a facelift, now available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the Rotoworld Draft Guide to help you dominate your competition. Use promo code ROTOWORLD10 for 10% off and unlock extensive fantasy, DFS, and betting tools now. Go to NBCSports.com/fantasylife to learn more. Denny, I'm saving our Olympics promo for a little later in the show, but I have been mainlining the Olympics, and my kids, the Olympics, man, this year are really breaking through this year. Like my kids are obsessed with it. They're like obsessed with Katie Ledecky.
Yeah, man. It's actually crazy to watch her swim and how much faster she is than everyone. Can I tell you one thing about Katie Ledecky? I didn't know that long distance swimmers don't really like kick their legs. Like
we noticed this last night too. Like, what is this? It's almost like an otter, just like
it's real, it's a very subtle lower body movement, right? So she's booking it with her arms, obviously, massive arms, but her legs are not really moving. But then I noticed when the guys went and they just did the I don't know what you call it, the back and forth.
We know a lot about swimming. Yeah.
I was on the swim team in 1995. They were kicking, so I guess it's a short sprint thing when you kick, but those long distance swimmers, they don't kick.
No. And just so like distance swimming, even amongst the Olympics is kind of a niche sport. Katie Ledecky earlier in her career also dominated in some of the shorter distances, just one of the all-time great all-around swimmers. But that caveat that it's kind of a niche sport, even amongst Olympians, like to just see someone in any discipline, whether it's like sports or otherwise, just be so far ahead of their competition, it really is just like awe-inspiring. I felt genuinely awe-inspired watching it.
I mean, 15 minutes of swimming as hard as you can. Are you kidding me?
I could
I could do it. I do it every day. Stop it. I left the room and did some stuff around the house, and I came back. She's still swimming.
I know.
And I thought, this is impossible.
I know. It is impossible. It will be impossible to not talk about the Chicago Bears offense as we wait on the leaps. Jason Hirschhorn to help us break down the Green Bay Packers. And Dan, I'll cut right to the chase on the Bears. Do you think the passing volume is going to be where fantasy managers need it to be to support all the notable skill players in this offense?
To an extent, yes. I mean, I wish I could say yes, absolutely, but
that's what you were supposed to say.
I'm sorry.
I wrote it on the show sheet, and Denny say this.
I flubbed my line. So let's start over. Ask me again. No, Caleb Williams does strike me as the kind of quarterback that is not going to, be the head of a balanced or run-heavy offense. You know what I mean?
Truly, he is not reading all of that.
No, he's not reading that. No. He's going to audible out of every single run on 3rd and 3.
Nice little playbook you have here. It would be a shame if someone audibled out of every single run.
It'd be a shame if we had a 13-play drive in which we did not run the ball once. So I mean, like Kirk Cousins is that kind of guy, right? Yes. Like Joe Burrow is that kind of guy. Like these guys they're not going to hand the ball off all that much. So I actually do think that there is a somewhat likely scenario where Chicago's like, I don't know, top 3 or 4 in pass rate over expected, that sort of thing. And that'd be awesome for Keenan Allen primarily, obviously for DJ Moore. I guess Rome Odunze would also get in the mix there. But I still think that Moore and Allen sort of block his upside.
I have to ask you about the receivers, but would we consider actually good Kirk Cousins a good career outcome for Caleb Williams? I think so, right?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
I was hoping.
Not everybody can win 7 Super Bowls,
I thought you were saying not everyone can win 7 games every year like Kirk Cousins.
Oh, well, that too. Sort of. I mean, that too. I mean, look, I think there's a reason Kirk Cousins keeps getting paid like the GDP of Brazil because he He's one of the few guys who can win 9 games for you.
No, it's because executives also play fantasy football, so they think he's actually good, so they sign him.
He is a creation of of course, Matthew Stafford being the first creation of fantasy. Cousins is the second.
Yeah, but we'll see if Cousins ever gets his actually good era that Matthew Stafford had in LA. Except for he wasn't even actually good. They didn't let him pass down the stretch of their Super Bowl winning season.
That's true.
I don't know why I'm talking about Kirk Cousins. We got to talk about the Bears pass catchers. And do you consider DJ Moore still the clear-cut wide receiver one? Because I do, but there's so many moving parts, so many new parts in this offense, new faces, top 10 pick, one of the all-time great slot receivers. Do you feel comfortable calling DJ Moore the clear-cut wide receiver one? Or like, is there a scenario where he is the clear-cut number one receiver, but it doesn't mean what it used to?
Right.
Just how do you feel with DJ Moore?
Yeah. I don't think it's clear-cut. I think that Keenan Allen, I've never been a Keenan Allen guy per se. I don't know if there are Keenan Allen guys.
No, they're not. There's always just people ready to end.
But he just falls out of bed and earns 12 targets. It's just that sort of thing. And DJ Moore didn't have any of that sort of target competition last season. Now, I think it can be counteracted for DJ Moore because, yes, he didn't have target competition, but he was in one of the run heaviest, most conservative, slowest offenses in the NFL. So you have a more fast-paced offense that passes a hell of a lot more, and that can counteract it. I'm not too worried about DJ Moore. I am taking him at his ADP. I think Keenan Allen's being a little underdrafted, though.
You just hit on so many important points, and that the target share is just not going to be there like it was last year for DJ Moore. But just hopefully the rising volume tide, like you said, offsets that and lets a special player kind of remain special. I mean, Keenan Allen was a special player, whether you want to debate that or not because of the injuries and all that, or if it was ever even smart for the Chargers to target him as much as they did. But they did do that. Rome Odunze looks like a special player coming out of college as a top 10 pick. Just up or down, who scores more PPR fantasy points this year? The slot machine, Keenan Allen, or the number 9 overall pick, Rome Odunze?
I'm going to Allen. I thought you were going to ask me between Moore and Allen, but I would lean Allen. I think PPR points, he's just a slot machine. Apparently he's working very closely with Caleb Williams. I can't imagine that
it's over for Odunze. Yeah, that's over.
I do like Odunze.
Is he just fancier? Totally different players, but is he from fantasy purposes? Is he fancier JSN this year? Totally imperfect, but in terms of just how is this guy going to command targets?
Right. Yeah, I think that does check out. I think he's going to be something like Mike Williams' fantasy profile over the years, which is kind of frustrating. Mike Williams never really emerged as a great fantasy option until or unless Keenan Allen was out. And I think Odunze will be the same deal.
It can be frustrating, but there is at least something there. That's nothing. If you can be a Mike, we know there's the ceiling for much, much more there from Roman.
Odunze is going to have big games. We know that. It's going to happen, but because and it's not going to be based on 12 targets. It's going to happen on a 3-target day, 4-target, something like that. I don't know if you're going to be able to confidently play Odunze in a 12-team league where you're starting 3 receivers.
Well, let's say Keenan Allen's quick-crete hamstring gives out on August 27th, and he misses the first 6 games of the year. Rome Odunze is currently the wide receiver 39. Would you call Rome Odunze a top 30 receiver?
Yes.
If Keenan Allen missed week 1, you would.
I think yes. I would be. I'd be okay with that. And it depends on the severity of the injury. If we're talking about, 2-week absence, whatever. But if we're talking about a serious injury, to either Moore or Allen, I think Odunze steps in for potentially, high volume passing offense with probably a good quarterback. So he has a lot of contingency value, I'd say.
DeAndre Swift, bargain or bust as the RB26. What do you think?
Probably bust.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the safe answer, but let's just be real. He's going to be a bust. Let's be real.
It's just hard. It's just hard. Like we've talked about a couple times on the show, the fact that every coaching staff sees DeAndre Swift do his thing and they immediately say, "Nah, we're good. We're okay without that. He doesn't play big. He's
well.
He's like a wannabe scat back, but he doesn't need to be because he is kind of big. I don't know. I mean, look, if he gets all the pass routes, if he's running, like 70-80% of the routes in a pass heavy Bears offense, he does become interesting like that.
Which I feel like he should do. I mean,
he should. And the team has said, like, we like his pass catching work. Like that's part of the appeal. So this could end up looking kind of silly for PPR purposes. I don't think that he's going to dominate early downs. I don't think that he's going to be like a very clear cut lead back 3 down kind of guy.
When I hear RB26 for DeAndre Swift, I think what my real answer is just, yeah, that sounds right. RB26, you're just like, yeah, who cares? Like, these are the rounds of the draft that don't matter at all.
Do you have who's going around him running back?
I do, Denny. Is RB26? Hold on. I was on receiver. He's the RB26. The RB25 is Mr. Jonathan Brooks. The RB27 is Mr. Raheem Mostert. I think I'd rather bet on either of those other guys, just to be honest.
How about
Zach Moss, 29, Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson. That all sounds like Swift. So actually, never mind. He's being underdrafted, DeAndre Swift.
That's a gross area. That is a gross area.
It's what is known as the dead zone. This is what is known as the quick break. And then we will be joined by the Leap's Jason Hirschhorn right after this. Experience the Olympics like you have never seen them before. Prime time in Paris tonight and through the end of the games, only on NBC and Peacock. I will be watching Primetime in Paris tonight. We really, really hope our next guest, the Leaps, Mr. Jason Hirschhorn, will also. Jason, just have you been watching the Olympics 24 hours a day? Please tell us yes. Our jobs depend on it.
Yes, obviously. Why would you sleep when the Olympics are on?
There you go.
Actually, is true.
That's the right answer, Jason.
It's unfortunately all too real for me. Like, listen, I love NBC. I'm proud to work for NBC. Can't say I needed to be watching Jahmyr Gibbs play 3-on-3 basketball at 11:30 p.m. last night. But that is what I was doing. Denny, did you know this thing? By the way, Jahmyr Gibbs is an Olympian.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a really, really crazy fact. A lot of crazy stuff that you see during these games on NBC and Peacock. But Jason, you're seeing a lot of crazy stuff at a Green Bay Packers camp. That is including this absolutely loaded receiver depth chart, or confused or jumbled, however you want to look at it. Just 4 really noteworthy names in fantasy football, which makes it, vexing, but potentially super high upside, and one of the highest upsides of the entire summer, maybe, depending if you get the right ADP value in this receiver core, because there are cases to be made for each of Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, even Dontavian Wicks. Fantasy managers will tell you, maybe a beat writer will tell you something else. But when there's 4 guys, there's going to be an odd man out, maybe 2 odd men out. But just what is your early take on this receiver core? Will there be a clear number 1? Will there even be a clear number 4? Or will this just be kind of a frustrating, difficult to predict rotation if you're like us and your fantasy managers just trying to discern target shares?
I don't think it is going to be the case the entire season that no one knows really the pecking order of that Packers receiving core. But I don't think we really have any strong indication right now as to what it's going to look like. I mean, using camp, which again, it's kind of a nebulous thing for every team, but there's not even a clear indication there. We've seen big moments for Romeo Doubs. There definitely seems to be a connection between him and Love. Mm-hmm. We've seen deep bombs to Christian Watson. That's kind of what he does. And Dontavian Wicks has come up clutch in some of those 2-minute drill situations. He had a touchdown earlier this week on a very difficult pass. So all of these guys, and Jaden Reed as well, he started camp on the PUP. He's since come off. He's going to have opportunities as well. So right now, I don't think you can say with any confidence that one of these guys is going to be the number 1, or that there won't be a clear number 1, a month or 2 into the season.
Denny,
I had a follow up on Watson. So I guess, we were kind of making jokes at first about Watson going to a special lab to get his hamstrings checked out.
Quite literally to the lab.
And Matt LaFleur seemed to be kind of jokey about it too, but it's a serious thing. And he apparently, we have some blurbs, some reports on the fact that he figured out that it was his stride that was causing the hamstring injury. So they seem to have figured that out. Is there optimism in training camp that he's going to be around, that he's going to be more available this season?
It's training camp. Of course, there's optimism, but how reliable is that optimism going to be? Now, what the University of Wisconsin lab, so to speak, that he was sent to found was that he has an asymmetry in his leg strength. That sounds like the kind of thing that could affect your ability to stay on the field, right? Like if one leg is doing way more work, it's easier to understand how the other leg has issues. But that doesn't necessarily mean that even as they correct that issue, and they've spent the offseason working on that asymmetry issue, that it's going to keep him on the field. Maybe it does, but we don't have a great track record historically of any player in any position who goes through soft tissue injuries like hamstring problems, where it just goes away and never comes back. It is possible. He's young. This is going to be his age 25 season. There's definitely reasons to think that he will be healthier this year and in the few years to come. But you can't really say that's a guarantee just because of the nature of the injury and the track record this particular player has with it.
And just as a follow-up to that, what does this offense do without Watson? Like, what does it do differently? What can't it do without him, and compared to what they can do with him on the field?
I mean, he is the easiest, most explosive player on that offense. Like, they're going to try to go deep. He's not the only player who can do it, but he's the one who's best able to do it regularly. We saw that during his rookie season. We saw that when he was healthy last season too. It wasn't just a one-year wonder situation. When he's gone, it does in some way change the geometry of the defense that they're seeing. They have other guys with similar speed, but it's not quite the same. And they're also not players who are quite as big, right? It's not just that he's one of the fastest players on the field. It's that he's also one of the tallest players on the field, one of the biggest targets. So when you take away that particular combination, there are a lot of things that the offense can still do. But in terms of getting the defense to really bite on those clear routes and open up the middle of the field, they'll still be able to do it, but it's not as efficient without him there.
Jason, I'm just going to put you on the spot and with the receivers, and just what is your gut feel of these four? Who will score the most fantasy points this season? And as we kind of all just laid out, we're just blindly guessing in this situation, but just when the dust settles, what is your gut feel over who will be the most statistically productive member of this receiver core?
I think it's going to be Jayden Reed. And it's not just because he was so successful as a rookie, although that obviously is usually a pretty good indication of future success. But it's also, there are so many more things that they'll do in the offense for him in particular they don't do for anybody else. He's not purely a slot guy, but they do play him there. Obviously, it's going to be a big role in most offenses. But there's a lot of gadget stuff that they will scheme up for him they don't do with anybody else. Like, some of the jet sweep stuff, they did a little bit with Watson as a rookie. But, that kind of went away as he became the clear number one receiver as that particular season went on. Now, they're still using him on certain sort of things where it's like he's clearly the purpose of that play, but they're not the same kind of scheme touches you get where the ball's getting in the hand of that receiver, in the case that I'm talking about here, Jayden Reed. And I think that's going to be something they do a lot in the red zone. We saw that last season. There was one game in particular where Jayden Reed scored 2 touchdowns, both in the red zone, one off either was a straight run or it was a push pass, but either way, basically a run play that they wouldn't have run for one of those other receivers, and is able to get open on a different drive, in the slot. So it's the kind of player where it's easier to see what kind of role he's going to have, again, health permitting. And, given all of the confusion with this receiving core, I guess it's the thing that I feel most comfortable betting on.
Jason, this might be kind of a silly question because there's probably no real answer to it. But, this time last year, everyone in the football world, probably very much including the Packers coaching staff, didn't really know what they were going to get from Jordan Love and how much they could put on his plate, or even if he would still be the starter by the end of the season. They probably assumed that he was still going to be the starter by the end of 2023, but it was just such a huge unknown. And then the way he answered it so strongly in the affirmative, just not just looking like a 5 to 10 year solution at quarterback, but maybe a potential superstar in the NFL. Is there a sense in Packers camp this summer that like Jordan Love's gonna be even more fully unleashed and he has autonomy within this offense? Basically, are we gonna see even another level to what Jordan Love did last year?
I think the answer is yes, and it's not strictly because of Jordan Love. It's easy to forget that he played in the youngest offense to win a playoff game in NFL history. Like, when you have young receivers in particular, and we saw this throughout 2023, they would run the wrong routes. You'd see them in the same area when clearly that wasn't the design of the play. And that was happening into late November and December. This wasn't an issue that just came up during, the first few weeks of the season. So that is presumably going to be less of an issue. All of these guys have at least one full year under their belt. Several of them have multiple years now. That's going to make a difference. And in terms of Love individually, like, it's hard to project some of these things because it is so easy to get hyperbolic with quarterbacks, especially those who just got massive extensions like Jordan Love just did. But most of the beat writers in camp have said, compared to where Jordan Love was at that same point last year, the first few weeks of training camp, even at the end of training camp, he is clearly so far ahead in the way that he operates the offense, just like the smoothness of that whole operation. I don't think that magically means that he's going to be, Patrick Mahomes, obviously, but could a lot of those issues that bogged down that offense through September and October just not appear this season, and then the high-end play become more regular? I do think that is not just possible, but maybe even likely because of all those things we just discussed.
Denny's going to ask you here about Josh Jacobs. He thought I was going to ask you about Josh Jacobs, but it's been near and dear to Denny's heart. I want him to ask you about Josh Jacobs.
I feel like I have reached, along with many fantasy managers, reached a point where I'm overthinking the Josh Jacobs thing. Was he brought in to be like the clear-cut lead back, and including the pass catcher out of the backfield? Yes or no? No, go ahead. I mean, to tell us about what his role would look like in this Green Bay offense. Because
they've been really talking up his involvement in the passing game, which we know he's quite capable of, but he was not as successful as with the Raiders last year. So we just cannot decide. Coach Matt LaFleur, who has always liked committees, it seemed like, just how much of a committee, if any, will this be with Josh Jacobs?
So I feel like you asked really multiple questions there, so I'll try to get to each of them. Yes, Josh Jacobs was brought in to be the clear lead back in that backfield. And I do think they want to get him more involved in the passing game, but they have said that for years about other running backs. So Aaron Jones, they always wanted to get more involved in the passing game than he was. That's a real thing they talked about for all of the first 5 years of LaFleur's tenure. Now, we know that Josh Jacobs going back to Alabama has those skills, so it's not something that can't be unlocked. But at the same time, I don't know that it's going to be that much different than it was. And if you look at some of the other players that they have in that backfield, A.J. Dillon is not going to be a huge participant in the passing game, but he'll get a bit here and there. And the rookie Marshawn Lloyd, who just returned to camp this week, is probably someone who projects more in that role. If they're going to sort of scheme up opportunities, a receiving opportunity for a running back, I think probably by the midpoint of the season, that's likely to go to him over some of these other guys. So yeah, he'll have receptions. I don't think it's going to be a situation where he never catches the ball, but I don't think it's going to be this explosion of targets that a lot of the coaching staff has discussed.
I wanted to follow up on the Dillon thing because Matt LaFleur seems very impressed with how A.J. Dillon looks. He said that A.J. Dillon's in the best shape of his life. He said a big man like that shouldn't have abs like that, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but so A.J. Dillon looking fit, trim, playing well apparently in training camp, showing out. Is he going to be the RB2 behind Jacobs, or I know you just mentioned the different roles, or is Lloyd the clear number 2, behind Jacobs?
I think, again, health permitting, that Dillon's probably going to spend most of the season, if not the whole year, as the number 2 running back. If you actually go back to Dillon's rookie year, when he was a second-round pick, they didn't use him very much behind Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. So even though he was someone with maybe a little more upside than Jamal Williams in terms of a down-to-down runner, they just didn't want to put him into action that much more than they had to. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the exact same situation with Marshawn Lloyd, but I do think they're willing to sort of let him have maybe not a redshirt NFL season, but something closer to like a half season in terms of his workload, and let the veterans ride it out. So I would expect that the majority of the carries, again, go to Josh Jacobs, and then somewhere around like 20, maybe even up to 30% go to A.J. Dillon. Maybe at the end of the year that starts to shift, but that's kind of my expectation at this point in the process.
So you're describing Marshawn Lloyd right now. He's like the RB 43 or 44 in fantasy drafts, which is like going to like the 11th or 12th round. Would you say that's just a waste of a draft pick, and he's not going to see enough touches early in the season, or like maybe just not someone, even if he does have a second role, you can't keep stashed that long? Would you be drafting Marshawn Lloyd in fantasy leagues right now?
I think the argument for drafting Marshawn Lloyd is looking at the health track record of the guys ahead of him. Josh Jacobs is not a guy who totally avoids the training room. A.J. Dillon has been banged up over the course of his career as well. It really takes one of those guys suffering an injury that costs him, let's even say like 3 weeks for Lloyd to get an opportunity. Then if it turns out that he's that much more effective in that number 2 role than the coaching staff expected, that could just become his role. Like, he's clearly going to be a meaningful part of this offense over the course of that rookie contract. At least that's the plan they have for him. And it could take just, one play to either Josh Jacobs or to AJ Dillon to sort of accelerate that development plan. So I don't think that there's no chance, but it is a lottery ticket situation.
Back to the receivers quickly.
Speaking
here.
of lottery tickets,
Speaking of that, Bo Melton has jumped out to stat sheet warriors like myself because Bo Melton, for instance, had the highest yards per route run of any Packers receiver last year. He has drawn some praise at training camp from what we've seen. I think we have a blurb on that. Is he going to be involved in this wide receiver rotation, or is he going to but would he require an injury or two to the starting receivers to actually get some playing time?
I think they plan to make him a real part of the offense. Not that he's going to be like a double-digit target guy, but if there's another player in that receiving core that has that very, very elite of elite speed besides Christian Watson, it's Bo Melton. And that's how they used him last year, especially when Watson was either out or limited with his injuries. So even if Watson is there's still going to be situations where they want to have other receivers on the field. Like, no receiver plays 100% of the snaps, even when they're healthy. I think Bo Melton is probably going to be that guy who they use to stretch the field. And then if Watson suffers another injury, whether it's the hamstring or something else, Bo Melton should see an uptick in usage because, you could use Jaden Reed in that role, but they like him more as the slot guy working the seams and doing stuff in the backfield. The other receivers, they have speed, but it's not to that degree. Bo Melton does, though. And that's why I think that there is going to be some meaningful role for him over the course of the season. I
think he's someone to monitor, just from a waiver wire standpoint, maybe in deeper formats, because I think he becomes very interesting if things are a little more muddled in this receiver room than we anticipate. Sticking with the pass catchers, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Green Bay tight ends. I know that as of now, Tucker Kraft is still recovering from a pec injury, and he should return at some point this month. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, the head coach said earlier this week that Tucker Kraft is getting close. Usually they don't say that unless it's something where it's going to happen within the next, let's say, week or so. So barring a setback, I would expect him back in camp relatively soon. And Tucker Kraft, in a lot of ways, had as exciting of a rookie season as Luke Musgrave. But you look at it now, it isn't just that he's missed camp. Like, he's been dealing with his injury for a while.
Yeah.
Musgrave is there. And, it's not that he's having as many splash plays as some of the other receivers, but the longer he's the only one of those two guys healthy, the easier it is for him to entrench himself as the clear number 1 tight end. And, there's going to be some value, I'd imagine, in fantasy if you have such a clear role like that.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of lost on like who to draft here among the Packers tight ends. It sounds like you think Musgrave might be the leader in the clubhouse as far as that tight end 1 role, that guy who's going to be primarily running the routes for this team. Am I reading you right?
Yeah, I think so. Prior to his lacerated kidney last season, he was actually on pace to break the Packers rookie record for receptions and receiving yards, records that were held by Sterling Sharp. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that he was going to do that, right? But that was the kind of workload that they had him on.
Yeah.
They eventually brought him back. They worked him in slowly. Even in that Dallas Cowboys wildcard game, he wasn't playing as many snaps as he might have earlier in the season. Obviously, if he's fully healthy, you expect that to change. So I think that's the type of target share you can expect from him. And Tucker Kraft, he's going to have a bigger role once he's healthy than he did at the beginning of the season. But I don't think he's going to meaningfully eat into that unless he gets back on the field very soon and starts to flash. Right now, I think the smarter money, so to speak, is on Luke Musgrave to sort of have that role.
Jason, I'll get you out of here. I always intend to be a softball, but sometimes it's kind of hard to conjure an answer out of thin air to this one. But just who's a Packers skill player who has surprised you so far through OTAs, the first week or so of training camp? Could be even in a negative way, but just someone who has been surprising. There's so much talk around so many of these guys. But yeah, I don't know why I'm asking you the same question 3 different ways. Who's someone who's been surprising?
So it's not someone that I would expect to have a huge role at any point this season, barring injury. But we saw last year that a lot of guys who weren't supposed to have big roles in that receiving core ended up having them. So Grant Dubose, who's actually the third wide receiver that the Packers drafted in 2023, he dealt with a back injury, if I recall correctly, effectively wiped out all of his training camp, didn't end up making the 53-man roster, and spent the whole year on the practice squad. But now that he's in camp, he's actually flashing almost as much as those bigger names that we were already discussing.
Wow.
And it's putting him in position, I think, to potentially get a roster spot this time around. We know that general manager Brian Gutekunst loves to keep his draft picks. Mm-hmm. And also, he's someone who, I would say he has a unique role or unique skill set on that team, but he can do a lot of the things that the other receivers can. He's a bigger bodied guy that can help with some of those things that like Dontavian Wicks was doing in blocking and in the intermediate area of the field. He also has a pretty good overall athletic profile, so he can do stuff further down the field. I don't think he's better at any one of those things than any of the guys I already mentioned, but if something happens to one of those players and they throw him in there, it wouldn't be totally shocking that he's actually able to do more than your typical 7th round pick can. So if you're looking for a deep sleeper, someone who could have an opportunity if, the situation conspires, I do think Grant Dubose is at least a name to keep an eye on at this point in the process.
Man, they have too many good receivers. They really need to share. They need to be more sharing with teams that desperately need receivers. I mean, Bo Melton would be like the number 1 receiver on 4 teams. I'm convinced.
Barely even hyperbole. And we asked you for someone surprising. That was indeed surprising, Mr. Dubose.
It was. You got us, Jason.
You got us, Jason. Yeah. Jason, really, really good stuff. Tell our listeners, tell our viewers where they can find your work and where they can find you on social media. Denny, do you have something you need to say there before we?
No. Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to mention Jason's site, but you go ahead, Jason. You tell the folks about that.
Well, I run a Packers newsletter called The Leap. You can find it at theleap.football. We are running a promotion right now where if you sign up before Monday, you get 50% off our 2024 annual rate. So go check that out. In terms of social media, you can find me on the site formerly known as Twitter at @by_JBH. At @by_JBH is also my handle on Threads because, we got to maintain that now too. And if you're a Blue Sky person, it's at @BYJBH. So the same thing minus the underscore. I hope you guys check it out.
Check it out. Excellent content, excellent stuff from Jason. Jason, thank you so much for taking time out of busy training camp time to join us on the show and break down some questions that we've been thinking about all summer. And
thank you, Jason.
Obsessively think about.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jason. Really, really good stuff. Denny, just the Packers receivers, man. Can they just announce it one day? Can Matt LaFleur just read a scroll whatever, fine. Wide receiver 1.
I mean,
yeah.
This is annoying. Now they have a 6th receiver. They have a 6th good receiver. What?
This is bad. I know. I didn't need the Grant Dubose because now Denny has already drafted Grant Dubose in 3 different best ball drafts.
Oh, I would never draft a wide receiver after round 7.
It's true. That's
that.
Point. So Denny, we still have a few more wide receivers, a few more fantasy players to talk about. They all play for the Minnesota Vikings, which, by the way, we break down this quarterback battle for the Minnesota Vikings on the return of Galaxy Brains, the people's favorite Galaxy Brains, where we go through some training camp competitions that includes J.J. McCarthy against any other Minnesota Vikings quarterback that is currently alive.
Yeah, and, that's right, including Brad Johnson, Dante Culpepper. They've actually come back. They're ahead of him on the depth chart.
Sid Luckman, was he on the Vikings? I can't remember. I think Sid Luckman was like a Bear, maybe.
You're thinking of Fran Tarkenton?
No, not. I wasn't. Fran was where I should have gone.
Yeah,
I was trying to think even further back than Fran.
That's okay. We can edit that out. It's okay.
Sid Luckman, I believe, played it actually for the Bears in the 40s, not for the Vikings, unfortunately. I'll just ask you the same question I asked you with the Bears. Do you think the passing volume is going to be where fantasy managers need it to be in this Vikings offense? Because it certainly was the past 2 years, even when they were starting almost literal plumbers at quarterback.
Your favorite, Nick Mullins, threw 48 times a game.
Fix is a hell of a sink. If my sink had been dripping for 2 years, I'd given up hope that anyone would fix it.
That's so wrong.
Nick Mullins.
Oh, man. I stand by Nick Mullins could be a starter on 15 teams.
Yikes.
So Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, came out this week and he did an interview and he said, look, we love our running backs. And this is a direct quote. He said, "We're going to, quote, establish it."
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a very tongue-in-cheek to me. First of all, I don't believe him. Even if he was like, "Yeah, no, we're definitely going to run." No, you're not. No, you're not, Kevin. You're not running the ball. You're going to throw it 50
Yes,
times.
you always ran the ball. The team that had JJ McCarthy for 4 years, though.
Yeah. Well, JJ McCarthy ain't playing. I mean, you know. So Sam Darnold's the starter. I like Sam Darnold.
What?
I like.
You really
him.
think Sam Darnold week 1? We're really going down this road?
Oh, it's locked in. It's happening.
This happens every summer. There's always one team until about August 16th. We'll never even mention the rookie's name. Then on August 16th, oh yeah, by the way, JJ McCarthy's a starter.
I mean, look, I feel like a lot of these teams are, sending some concerning signals. Like the Patriots with Drake May, they're like, yeah, no, he's definitely not going to be playing. So
maybe you shouldn't have drafted that guy.
With McCarthy, third team practices in training camp. Who else? I forget other rookie quarterbacks. But anyway,
Michael Penix, I'm sure, is getting a lot of first team reps in Atlanta.
Yeah. So I do think it's the Darnold show. I think that he would have to fail spectacularly.
He's never done that before.
I mean, it was the Jets. What do you want? He was good with the Panthers. He really impressed with the 49ers. I think that he could have been good there if he had a chance. So they're going to be pass heavy again. And that probably means that Justin Jefferson somehow is being underdrafted just based on the crazy volume he's going to see, especially with TJ Hawkinson likely, to miss time as he recovers from that injury from last year. So I do think we're going to see a lot of passing. Yeah.
Fantasy manager think we're going to see a lot of running because first off, there's a perception that it's like a really deep skill core. And maybe it would be if TJ Hawkinson were healthy, but as you just said, he's not. KJ Osborne, who got a lot of targets, is gone. There's not a lot of target competition. I know it's like Justin Jefferson, who it's hard to envision anyone getting targets other than the best receiver on planet Earth, but that's one guy. Like, someone's got to get targets. Jordan Addison had a very impressive rookie season, and he's going as the wide receiver 47 right now. It seems very low to me. I was just wondering if you think he has any shot at cracking the top 36, maybe even the top 30. Remembering it was a first rounder who had a very impressive rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't get a suspension for this latest driving incident.
Keep forgetting about that.
But yeah, so I'm a little reticent about that. But yeah, I mean, the depth chart is Jefferson, Addison, and Jalen Naylor as the three top receivers. So you would have to think that Addison it's going to be kind of a tight target share between him and Jefferson until Hawkinson comes back. Yeah.
So say he played all 17 games. Do you think Jordan Addison would be a top 36 receiver?
I do. And he's going to have a frustrating profile. I mean, he ran hot. He ran real hot. I wrote him up as a regression candidate in the Rotoworld draft magazine. And that's because he caught 10 touchdowns and a lot of them came on deep balls. It's not the sort of production that's usually sustainable or reliable.
He did have almost 1,000 yards too. I mean,
and Jefferson missed, 8 games or whatever it was. So a full season from Jefferson is not good news. I feel
like it's offset though by injured Hawkinson, and like KJ Osborne was not just like some guy who he was getting targets, like a pretty decent amount of targets, actually.
Right. So that checks out. I guess I don't know. I'm not really. Addison, I'm not really in on. I was last year. Actually, I was kind of excited about him, but after he ran so red hot last year, I'm just a little hesitant to go in again and be like, yeah, he's going to keep that up.
That makes a lot of sense. I just feel like people have gotten to the point where they over-internalize regression. Like, yeah, he's probably not going to score 10 touchdowns again, but
he could score 6, 7.
They kind of doubt there are 46 better receivers than Jordan Addison. This is kind of my take on it. And
that makes sense. I do want to say, from the tight end standpoint, Robert Tonyan, the former Packer and Bear, is way down on the depth chart, but has apparently really been impressive. And in spring practices and summer, I think that he has a good chance to start the season as the route running tight end in this offense. And if it's as pass heavy as I think it'll be, Tunyon could be sort of fun for fantasy.
Tunyon, I believe, I was about to fact check you there, where he was carted at practice on Wednesday, but it was with back spasms. So hopefully he's okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't see that.
he was carted. Well, the reason you didn't see it is because it ended up being just back spasms. He was carted from Vikings practice. Final question. Aaron Jones, bargain or bust as the RB19. I'm shocked that fantasy managers have got Aaron Jones back in the top 20, I'll say.
The reason why I think mostly is because he was so good in the final month and a half of last season, including in a very high profile setting in the postseason. He dominated in that Packers game against the Cowboys, and so that I think that sort of thing gets branded into the mind of the fantasy manager, and you say, oh well, got to get that guy next year. Ty Chandler would be my pick. I'm sure you're shocked by this. I'm not paying that price for Aaron Jones in this offense. I feel like the bust potential is pretty high. It's not low, I should say.
Yeah, a guy who's 30 and changing teams, coming off an injury wipeout season of the hamstring,
and constant injuries at this point. Constant.
And in an offense, a very uncertain offense, where we don't even really know who the quarterback's going to be. The bust potential does seem extremely high. A guy who used to be a really good goal line back and then was just never allowed to score either his final 3 years in Green Bay.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of weird stuff with Aaron Jones.
And Ty Chandler was good last year in his limited opportunity.
For my Dynasty League team, I really need Ty Chandler to be.
Oh, yeah, you're a Ty Chandler guy.
I'm a Ty Chandler, quote-unquote, sicko. I'm going to throw that out there. So, yeah, really, really good stuff from Mr. Ben Raven and MLive.com. Mr. Jason Hirschhorn of The Leap. Thank you so much to our guests. Thank you so much to Denny for his insight. We're going to have a lot of content coming out over the next few weeks as training camp shifts into ever higher gear. Several articles next week. Be sure to keep it locked to rotoworld.com. Not just the articles, of course, but the hourly news updates and all the comings and goings and happenings at training camp. So for Denny, for Ben, for Jason, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back on Tuesday.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.